Hey everyone, I'm Troy. Today we're diving into something that sounds a bit dull but is actually super fascinating: tariffs. You might be thinking, tariffs? Isn't that just taxes on stuff crossing borders? What's there to talk about? Oh, hold your horses. Did you know the US just dropped a bombshell on 2nd April 2025? They're slapping a minimum 10% tariff on all imports, and for China it's a whopping 34%. What does that mean? Your phone, your clothes, even the cat food in the US, it's all about to get pricier. And behind this, there's a wild story stretching back thousands of years, from the Silk Road to today's trade wars. Tariffs aren't just numbers, they've shaped the world. So buckle up, I'm taking you on a time-traveling adventure. We'll uncover where tariffs came from, how they turned into weapons, and what America's latest move means for us all. Oh, and get this. The first tariffs were basically highway robbers shaking down travelers. Let's hit the road, no tolls required. The origins of tariffs. Let's rewind the clock a few thousand years. Back then, the word tariff didn't exist, but the concept? It was alive and kicking. Picture this. You're a merchant trudging along the Silk Road with a caravan of camels loaded with silk, heading to Europe to make a fortune. The scenery's gorgeous. Rolling dunes, starry skies, until BAM! A gang of bandits jumps out, swords gleaming, and says, "Want to pass? Pay up." That's right, the OG toll fee. And guess what? That's pretty much the root of tariffs, paying to move stuff from point A to point B. Fast forward a bit, and along came governments. Kings and emperors saw what the bandits were up to and thought, hey, why let these thugs have all the fun? So they took over the racket, turning it into official customs duties. Take ancient Rome, for example. They set up checkpoints at ports, taxing every ship that docked. That's the birth of tariffs as we know them. By the Middle Ages, European nobles took it to another level. They'd slap a toll on everything: crossing a bridge, pay; sailing a river, pay; walking through a village, yep, pay again. What's the difference between that and bandits? Simple. Bandits were freelancers. Tariffs were state-sponsored shakedowns. Did you know the word tariff comes from the Arabic tarif, which means notification or list? Back in the day, tax collectors would whip out a scroll and say, "Here's what you owe for your goats, your wine, your fancy rugs." Sound familiar? It's basically the ancient version of today's customs forms. Tariffs evolved from protection to power plays. All right, let's zoom to the 17th and 18th centuries. Tariffs started getting organized. Nations figured out they weren't just a cash grab, they could be a shield. Take Britain during the Industrial Revolution. They were pumping out textiles and steel like crazy, but they didn't want cheap foreign goods flooding in and stealing their thunder. So what did they do? Jacked up tariffs on imports, forcing everyone to buy British. This trick's called protectionism. Ring any bells? Yep, it's making a comeback today. But here's where tariffs get spicy. They can double as weapons. Ever heard of the Opium Wars? In 1840, Britain wanted to sell opium to China, but the Qing dynasty said, no thanks. Britain didn't take kindly to that, so they waged war, won, and forced China to sign the Treaty of Nanjing. Part of the deal? Slash those tariffs. Suddenly British goods poured in like a tsunami, wrecking China's local industries. That's the dark side of tariffs. They can build empires or break them. Here's a wild one. In the early days of the US, tariffs were the government's cash cow. When the Constitution kicked in, they didn't have income taxes. Tariffs brought in over 90% of federal revenue in 1790. Imagine funding a whole country just by taxing ships. Pretty slick, right? Modern tariffs. Now let's jump to the 20th century. After 2 world wars left everyone exhausted, nations decided, maybe fighting's overrated. Let's trade instead. Enter globalization. In 1947, 23 countries signed the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, which later morphed into the World Trade Organization, WTO. Their big idea? Cut tariffs, boost free trade. And it worked. From 1947 to 2000, global average tariffs dropped from 40% to just 4%. That's why your gadgets and jeans got so cheap. But here's the catch. Not everyone was thrilled. Take the US. As tariffs fell, their factories started closing. Jobs vanished because places like China and Mexico could make stuff cheaper. What's the fix? Raise tariffs. Cue the 2018 US-China trade war. Trump slapped 25% tariffs on Chinese goods. China hit back with taxes on American soybeans and cars. It was like a global slap fight, and we were all caught in the middle. Tariffs aren't just for countries. Cities used to get in on the action too. Before Germany unified in the 19th century, every little town had its own tariffs. Hauling goods from Berlin to Munich? You'd pay dozens of tolls along the way. Total nightmare. No wonder unification sparked an economic boom. 2025's U.S. tariff bombshell. Here's the hot topic. On 2nd April 2025, the U.S. just rolled out a wild new policy, 10% tariffs on all imports, but a jaw-dropping 34% on stuff from China. Why so harsh? Well, America's ticked off. They say China's been hitting U.S. goods with 67% tariffs, so this 34% is their fair comeback. Half of China's rate. Math checks out. The ripple effects? Huge. Think about your iPhone. Tons of its parts come from China. With a 34% tariff, Apple either eats the cost or hikes prices. Experts reckon if it all gets passed to consumers, Americans will shell out an extra $50 billion a year. And China's not going to sit quietly. They'll likely retaliate, maybe taxing U.S. soybeans or Boeing planes harder. Before you know it, global supply chains are a mess, and we're all paying the price. So why is the U.S. going all in? They've got leverage. America's the world's biggest consumer market. Everyone wants in. Higher tariffs mean foreign companies either pony up or move factories stateside. It's economic nationalism, and Trump's playing it like a pro. The future of tariffs. So where's this all headed? I'm no psychic, but let's speculate. Option 1. Tariff wars escalate, splitting the world into Team USA and Team China, each piling on taxes and trading only with their buddies. Option 2. Cooler heads prevail, everyone negotiates, and we get new rules that keep the peace. Nobody wants a lose-lose, right? One thing's for sure, tariffs aren't going anywhere. Why? They're too handy. Need cash? Tariffs. Want to protect jobs? Tariffs. Mad at another country? You guessed it. Tariffs. It's the Swiss Army knife of economics. Simple, brutal, and oh so effective. And that's our tariff journey. We've gone from bandit tolls to America's 34% China smackdown, with pit stops at the Opium Wars and Globalization. Pretty wild, huh? Tariffs aren't just boring stats. They're about power, money, and history duking it out. Here's a question for you. If you were president, how'd you wield tariffs? Drop them to 0 for a free-for-all, or crank them to 100% and lock out foreign goods? Hit the comments. I want to hear your take. If you enjoyed this ride, smash that like and subscribe button. I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.